induce the auditory hallucinations of trumpets frequently associated with the boiled one or Fen-228's corruption. Description: SCP-DN1 is an extremely tall, dark mass-like entity with a distinct red melted face reported by observers. The primary anomalous effect is cognitohazardous, which, for those unaware what that means, you simply need to know it exists for it to cause damage. So with that being said, if anyone sees SCP-DN1's face, they essentially are just going to start feeling anxious and paranoid, as would be expected when you see something as like horrific as this. But past that, there isn't really much until they decide to fall asleep in any way, shape, or form, including even the shortest naps. Once this happens, they will wake up in a pseudo-coma state, which, for anyone who is unfamiliar with the pseudo-coma state, it essentially is sleep paralysis with a bunch of other fancy terms thrown on top of it. Basically, you wake up, you can't move, but you can see, and that's all you need to know, because you are now under its control and you will be trapped here for an insanely long amount of time. But despite this, reports have mentioned that you don't really die, which to be honest is almost more insulting because of how game-ending this effect is for you. Victims additionally report persistent nighttime auditory phenomena, including trumpet sounds and the perceived laughter/screaming of thousands, along with frequent appearances of DN1 itself. By this point, many of you have either talked about watching my content at night, or in some cases even mentioned sleeping to it. However, that's possible. Regardless, if you're already planning on sleeping soon after this video, I can't recommend picking up some of this video's sponsor, Manta Sleep's line of sleep assistance products. Mainly their line of... Now back to the video. SCP-DN2, Object Class Euclid. SCP-DN2 is to be contained in a number of bathrooms that were recovered from various locations. These are to be kept exactly the same as how you found them, including like the sinks, the bathtubs, everything in there. This is put in place to reduce the amount of agitation that the entity will experience when arriving on the facility. Personnel entry requires two-person teams with continuous body cam recording and real-time psychological monitoring for guilt spikes, grief episodes, and compulsive apology behavior. Audio capture is required at all times. Direct verbal engagement is prohibited, except via pre-approved script lines designed to prevent DN2 from becoming aggressive or latching onto personnel. Any reports describing SCP-DN2 as both guilt and the boy are treated as non-canon labels used for clarity only. Description: SCP-DN2 is a tall, slender, gangly humanoid figure with a deteriorating neck and a head that appears flattened or sliced. Witness accounts describe root or mold lichen-like material protruding from the throat region. DN2 has only really been properly documented in the media labeled Boy in the Bath, which comes from the perspective of a parent figure that is latched onto, causing intense guilt due to their negligence, assumably leaving their child to die in a bath. With further research, this was found to be the confirmed case for the victim in the video. And with this, we can observe that the behavior of DN2 often correlates with various cases of blame and accusing. Known quotes attributed to DN2 include, "Why did you leave me here? I never existed to you. And I know you heard me. It was all your fault." Additional note: DN2 is repeatedly indicated to reside in the bathroom next to the tub, with contextual evidence suggesting an infant age or slightly older due to the crib and toy presence and depiction of DN2 in a crib near the parent at the end of the source material. This allows us to assume that DN2 behaves less like a roaming predator and more like a location-tethered, guilt-triggered apparition that weaponizes memory and responsibility. Euclid classification is assigned as relocating or containing this creature outside of the designated DN2 Lock-1 or the bathrooms have not been verified. Because of the psychological hazards, DN2 is definitely not considered safe and is known to cause serious trauma loops. SCP-DN3, Class Euclid. Special containment procedures. Instances of SCP-DN3 are to be tracked through both air and underground signaling that can alert the Foundation personnel when large structures have been uprooted and are rapidly moving somewhere else. When something like this is confirmed, civilians are to be immediately evacuated from all the surrounding areas using the excuse of a structural collapse or a gas line incident in order to prevent mass panic. DN3 is then to be lured towards containment areas with a mixture of low-frequency noises and intense light to discourage it from going towards further population centers. Once an instance becomes stationary again, a perimeter is to be set up around it, and all structures within the vicinity are to be immediately evacuated. Foundation assets will then prioritize minimizing collateral damage rather than direct confrontation. Description: SCP-DN3 are essentially titanic entities that semi-resemble hermit crabs, at least in the way that they use large houses, typically 3 stories or taller, as a sort of shell. A recorded example depicts a DN3 instance occupying a structure consistent with a 4-story house. At a concluded, physical estimates place DN3 height at approximately 40 to 60 feet, with mass estimates ranging anywhere from 80,000 to 160,000 pounds. Available information suggests that DN3 may be capable of flight or levitation. However, records explicitly note that this is uncertain, with only photographic interference and unknown mechanics. Documents of DN3 are rare, leading me to believe that these creatures are elusive and are often only seen before that witness is then killed. DN3 is classified as Euclid purely because we don't really know how many of them there are, or really what causes them to move, and of course whether they can fly all the time or just in specific situations. All we really know is they're these giant crab-like entities that most of the time are hidden, only to one day randomly jump out and crush a ton of people to death. We're gonna have to look into further information in order to further update the rating. SCP-DN4, Object Class Keter. Special containment procedures. All Foundation sites are to implement screen breach countermeasures in critical zones, meaning no unsecured monitors, no unattended active displays, and no civilian accessible screens in areas containing DN4 related evidence. DN4 is to be contained in a hardened chamber with no layered physical barriers, with no transparent or reflective surfaces. All observation must be done in indirect methods that do not provide DN4 with a screen. Staff are instructed to treat any noises like thumping on screens or other disruptions having to do with monitors or as a possible breach event and initiate a lockdown. Lockdowns include cutting power to all screens in the immediate vicinity, and if it does manage to escape, a task force to track DN4 down.
These are the cross-strap sandals by Crocs. They are so comfortable. I literally can wear them all day, and the fact that you can customize these makes it even better. I'm telling you, grab you a pair for the summer before they sell out.
What's up, everybody? My name is Bree Hall, and we're gonna go through what's in my bag. First thing in my bag is some granola bars. Another thing in my bag is a water bottle.
SCP-DN4 is a completely black, lanky, tall humanoid entity, around 13 feet, with thin, sharp, stick-like arms and a deformed human face featuring hollow eyes. Tube-like appendages cover its head and neck region, leading to the suggestion that it may be biomechanical in nature. DN4 is also referred to as the Thumper and is documented primarily in the tapes labeled TOE and Smilehood. DN4 attacks by breaking through screens and is presumed to eat victims. However, at least one record notes that the victim's body appeared untouched, with everything inside missing, implying that internal consumption of the organs and other things without the need for the external visible mutilation. Hazard designation in available records leads leading me to believe that its biggest hazard is the fact that it's a man-eater. Additional notes. DN4 earns Keter classification's method of attack being screen breaching makes modern containment a nightmare. Special containment procedures. All media referencing Philbis, Philbism, chair consumption rituals, or basically any type of honoring Philbis is to be flagged as a DN5 cognito hazard and immediately quarantined to be looked over. Public-facing removals should use standard tactics such as copyright claims and bot suppression in order to make sure that it doesn't go too viral and doesn't create too much curiosity, as that would definitely backfire, leading to a huge amount of people being infected with the condition. Any persons involved with these uploads are to be immediately raided and taken into custody, where they can be properly screened and quarantined until they are returned to a normal state. Any personnel dealing with these people or any sort of the media are also to be screened to make sure they themselves don't become victim to the cognito hazard. Staff are also to be on a constant lookout for denial loops, basically people who repeatedly insist that Philbis does not exist while actively still discussing it in private, along with, of course, urges to eat wooden furniture. Any physical artifacts, chairs, chair fragments, Philbis ads associated with outbreaks are to be sealed and stored. Ingested incidents are definitely considered medical emergencies, as, you know, I like eating wood as much as the next guy, but you may end up with some sort of impaled stomach. Description. SCP-DN5 is an unusual humanoid figure with a jet black torso, beige head and hands, and legs resembling the structure of a chair. DN5 often appears with a small black top hat, but balanced on a bald head. The entity is associated with the oddity compendium and records list and occupation of hypnosis alongside a hazard type of cognito hazardous. Exposure of DN5 media has a sort of peculiar phenomenon associated with it, in the fact that it'll randomly turn into Philbis related media or an ad advertising joining Philbism, which often makes viewers and readers compelled to join in various chair eating rituals and other symptoms of Philbism, all while simultaneously denying it even exists. This denial while still spreading it pattern is definitely a red flag that one has been affected by the cognito hazard. A recurring Philbism initiation instruction is the directive to eat a chair, any type or method, often framed as necessary to become enlightened. Additional notes. DN5 is Euclid because the entity itself is not consistently physical or localized in available documentation, but the spread is definitely real enough to cause harm, first with the urges, then the chair ingest, and then eventually the spreading to other victims. If Philbism ever becomes too widespread, it could honestly be considered world-ending, especially if Philbis is actually physical and need to be captured, but as of now, this is unknown. SCP-DN6, Object Class Keter, Special Containment Procedures. SCP-DN6 containment basically is more focused on preventing it from showing up, and then when it does show up, making sure that the person has the highest chance of surviving the incident. As there isn't really a select way to predict where this entity is going to show up at any place in time, as it tends to just select a person and then appear. All reports of hallway glows or unexplained soft light emanation at night in residential settings are to be investigated under the foundation cover of being an electrical fire risk. If DN6 is cited, subject must be instructed via remote comms if necessary to avoid behaviors that can make the problem worse and to stay put. Direct armed engagement is prohibited due to DN6 documented ability to use intense concentrated light to eliminate anyone in its vicinity. Not that shooting would really do any good anyways. Post-event, survivors, if any, require trauma care, possible memory wiping drugs if appropriate, and long-term monitoring for any recurrent transgression replay episodes. SCP-DN6 refers to oncolagers or oncolagere, humanoid entities cloaked in black with a head resembling a large luminous star-like shape. At the center is a single prominent eye, with rays extending outwards like spikes. Reports describe them as sort of angelic beings appearing in front of people who, in their eyes, have committed unforgivable sins, apparently in order to offer some sort of redemption or a last chance to beg for forgiveness. Encounters often start with soft glows in hallways, turning into sort of a more prominent light, and then the being eventually appearing. You are then inflicted with a large wave of guilt and basically frozen in place, and then brought to your knees. You then have reportedly two choices, either to repent and apologize or sort of be generally remorseful for whatever sins it's accusing you of, or to fight back, leading to those resisting being incinerated. This is typically done by DN6 intensifying the radiance of its face, leading to excessive burns. The word oncolagere is stated to be German for accuser. Additional notes. DN6 is designated Keter because 1. It is selective and seemingly autonomous in targeting, 2. It is capable of instant lethal action via its radiance, as we spoke about before, and 3. It is not currently containable in any sort of way, by physical means at least, based on the available documents that we have so far. The Foundation itself does not attempt to adjudicate sins as a moral authority of sorts. It only attempts to acknowledge the entity's targeting pattern as it's reported. Because of these, containment is both impossible and not practical or safe. Possible reclassification to Apollyon is to be brought up with the O5. SCP-DN7, Object Class Keter, Special Containment Procedures. All sightings of SCP-DN7 are to be treated as high priority, with immediate information containment, confiscation of imagery, deletion of uploads, and targeted anesthetics or memory wiping drugs where feasible. Sites must maintain a cramped space watch list, covering service tunnels, crawl spaces, storage closets, and other small dark areas where DN7 is reported to rapidly appear. Entry into such spaces requires a buddy system and portable high lumen lighting. Due to the nature of DN7's stated hunger profile, Foundation really basically relies on early detection and delay tactics rather than a direct containment. Any credible reports of DN7 entering massive population centers are to be brought up with the O5 as a sort of high priority contingency. Reports of DN7 in homes are typically treated as a lost cause, and all of the homes around it are to be evacuated under the tense of some sort of natural disaster or other hazards that would require an evacuation. Description. SCP-DN7 is described as a face with a broken and outstretched jaw and deepened eye sockets where the eyes don't seem to fit. It is reported to appear in a cramped, small, dark spots and possess a long, very thin body. Its facial structure appears to change slightly across images, suggesting possible evolution. The associated document that is only accessible by certain high-level personnel is often summarized to teams and immediately will make the room go silent. It states that DN7 is infinitely hungry for basically everything, with everything including like time and space, concepts and meaning, souls, people, emotions, and it is stated to be constantly on our way to where we are now, slowly but surely, implying to while it's not the fastest creature in the world, it will eventually reach you. Additional notes. The Foundation provisionally treats DN7 as a potential conceptual consumption threat based on the above lore description. This is not a confirmed mechanism mechanism because confirming it would probably require getting close enough to die in a way that doesn't fit in a report. But the language is specific enough that DN7 is flagged for the worst case planning, which in plain terms, if something is hungry for, time and space, you don't typically wait until it's at your front door to start acting like it's real. SCP-DN8, Object Class Euclid, Special Containment Procedures. All known photographs and accounts depicting SCP-DN8 are to be held in a sealed, non-public Foundation archive labeled DNA ARC, with access limited to staff assigned to containment of this entity. Any newly discovered imagery that contains DNA in the background is to be taken, placed with photo editing software with direct copies that no longer include the entity. Individuals reporting direct sightings of this entity are to be taken into a sort of direct watch program where they are under direct surveillance of many Foundation personnel to see any sort of escalations occur both mentally in the subject, behaviorally, or in the fact of or intrusions of the entity itself. This is going to require camera supervision and of course a safe house if confirmed that it is indeed following a single person. This is because there have been numerous examples of people who even survived the initial encounter with DNA only to end up disappearing later on. SCP-DNA is a malevolent paranormal apparition described as a naturally tall, slender male figure wearing what resembles a suit. DNA possesses 6 long gangly arms that extend down towards the knees and spikes on his head that form a 4-pronged hat-like shape. DNA's intentions remain unknown, but is repeatedly described as stalking specific people. Reported after effects in witnesses include chronic paranoia, disturbing visions, hearing disembodied voices in the middle of the night, and the development of hunger for non-human delicacies. Whatever the hell that means. I'll let you guys imagine. Additional notes. We are unaware really how old this creature is, but it seems it dates at least back to 1947, while it was originally photographed during a photo shoot of their family on their father's farm. DNA appeared on this image standing perfectly still. The photographer reported feeling an unsettling presence nearby, and upon turning and spotting the entity directly, DNA disappeared instantly. 4 months after the individual noticed something wrong on the photograph, they vanished without a trace, leaving only clothing and personal belongings behind. Item SCP-DN9, Object Class Euclid, Special Containment Procedures. Foundation employees that are stationed in psych wards are to immediately flag any mention of cone zones, tall cone-headed visitors, or any sort of other entity, or any entity that kind of resembles the shape and that no one else can see for select patients that likely will be followed with a rapidly deteriorating mental state. Suspected DN9 instances are to be combated with protocol groundwire, which includes increased staff presence around the affected, patient isolation from other peers, and continuous reality anchoring prompts in order to attempt to bring the tweaking individual back to reality before it's too late. The protocol is to be delivered by a trained personnel. Patients are to be instructed to avoid eye contact and conversation with any entity matching DN9's description, no matter how real it seems. Otherwise, they will infest your brain more severely, showing up all over the victim's life. Description: SCP-DN9 designated cone zones are tall humanoid entities with black bodies, exceptionally long thin limbs, and pointed cone-like heads. Their faces are pale with dark, melancholic eyes and perpetually sad expressions. Their posture and extreme thinness have led to speculation that they move infrequently. DN9 is often associated with manipulation and insanity inducement, and at least one record lists a possible height of 15.2 feet, which is of course unconfirmed. Additional notes: DN9 entities are described as deceptive and often appear friendly, frequently initiating or inviting conversation. They are most commonly encountered during the 0.001% phenomenon, characterized in source as a rare event experienced by individuals admitted to psychiatric wards. Engagement with DN9 of any sort rapidly accelerates someone's descent into madness, which leads me to believe that they're more of a mental hazard and not really a physical hazard, but this is to be debated, as the Foundation really has no clue whether it does actually possess a physical entity, just maybe one on a different plane, or maybe one that is just completely invisible to everyone except for the person who is affected. And further testing will likely be needed to confirm this. SCP-DN10, Object Class Euclid, Special Containment Procedures. All sightings or mentions of baby-eating John are to be tracked through social media monitoring of Dr. Noah-related communities. Images and posts are to be archived, scrubbed, and replaced with non-anomalous edits where feasible. Any case involving infant disappearance with coinciding reports of intense screaming or a pale humanoid or an imaginary friend, in quotes, figure be escalated to DN10-alert and treated as an active predator risk. If DN10 manifests in a domestic setting, civilians are to be removed under a gas leak or structure hazard cover story as usual, and infants transferred to Foundation protective custody with their parents until the event is resolved. SCP-DN10 is a tall humanoid creature described as having pale skin, frail crossed legs, 2 long thin arms with small hands pointing upwards, and a broad sunken torso. DN10's head features 2 long horizontal appendages, sometimes described as antennas, protruding from either side. These appendages, as horrifying as it sounds, tend to emit a screaming noise when a baby is nearby, and occasionally people can also report it having small colorless eyes and a single row of black teeth. Additional notes: this one is honestly one of the biggest menaces in the verse, in my opinion. If this thing was even close to the neighborhood I was in, I'd be sending my kids strapped to school every day. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. That, or more realistically, with a vehicle escort. I know some people are afraid of like Pennywise. Pennywise ain't got shit on this thing. And I'd be way more scared if I was a kid and this thing was screeching and charging towards me, trying to eat me, and it's not even close. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for my Dr. Nowhere SCP video. Be sure to check out the Trevor Henderson video, which is very similar to this one, except for doing that verse. And if you guys want to see me do any other sort of SCP crossover videos like this, make sure to let me know down in the comments below, because it lets me know whether you guys enjoy these or whether you guys would rather see me move on to another series. And as always, make sure to go show Dr. Nowhere some love on his YouTube and his Instagram, as he is a very talented artist, and these videos would not be possible without his work. Thank you all so much for the support that you guys show me on the community post, as well as in the comment section.